The afternoon light at JFK Stadium fell at the specific angle of mid-July in Philadelphia, the kind of light that arrives already tired, heavy with heat, pressing down on everything it touches. It was Friday, July 12, 1985, the day before the largest rock and roll benefit concert in history, and the stage in South Philadelphia was full of noise. Roadies running cable, sound engineers calling instructions into headsets, musicians arriving in waves, each one trailing an entourage, each one carrying the particular tension of someone who is about to perform for 1 billion people and knows it. Mick Jagger had been on stage since early afternoon. He was 41 years old, 11 days from his 42nd birthday, and he was rehearsing with the Hall & Oates Band, running through the songs he was scheduled to perform the following evening. Lonely at the Top, Just Another Night, Miss You, numbers from She's the Boss, the solo album he had released 5 months earlier, his first record without the Rolling Stones. The Stones were at Live Aid too. Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood would play later in the evening with Bob Dylan. But Jagger was here as a solo act, which meant the weight of the night rested on him alone, which meant the rehearsal had to be precise. He was in the middle of Miss You when he saw her. She was standing at the side of the stage. Tina Turner, 45 years old, wearing sunglasses in the July heat, watching the rehearsal with the contained attention of a performer who never fully stops observing other performers, who is always simultaneously present and studying. She had agreed to join Jagger for the final 2 songs of his set, State of Shock and It's Only Rock and Roll, But I Like It, and she had arrived at JFK Stadium for the same reason he had arrived, because before you play for 1 billion people, you run through it once. Jagger saw her and stopped thinking about Miss You. He danced over to greet her, the specific Jagger motion that is not quite walking and not quite dancing, but some territory between the two. The movement of a man who has been performing since 1963 and whose body has stopped distinguishing between stage and not stage. He crossed the rehearsal space toward Tina Turner with the loose-limbed ease of someone greeting an old friend, which is what she was. After a brief consultation, heads together, the shorthand of 2 people who have known each other long enough to talk without full sentences, he turned to the band. "We're going to segue into It's Only Rock and Roll," he announced. "Let's really kick ass here." The band pounded into the opening of State of Shock. They rehearsed for over an hour. They worked on the arrangement, the tempo, the transitions between songs. They worked on the choreography, not the word either of them would have used, because choreography implies something planned and deliberate. And what they were doing was more instinctive than that. More like 2 people who have been in each other's proximity long enough to know how to move around each other. Jagger, a few minutes before 9 o'clock in the evening, listening to a playback, finally said, "That's it. That's it. We got it. Jesus." Tina Turner went back to her dressing room. She had known Mick Jagger for almost 20 years by then. The friendship had begun in 1966, when the Rolling Stones brought the Ike and Tina Turner Revue to England for a joint tour. Tina was 26 years old, and the Revue was already known for a particular quality of stage energy that had not yet reached England. The full-body commitment, the band and the Ikettes locked together, Tina in the center of it all, moving in ways that made other performers look like they were standing still. The English audiences received it with the stunned enthusiasm of people encountering something they had not known they were waiting for. Mick Jagger received it the same way. He had already been in the Rolling Stones for 3 years by then. He had already developed the stage presence that would define him, the strut, the tambourine, the specific quality of attention commanding that made him the kind of performer people could not look away from. He was good. He knew he was good. He also watched Tina Turner on stage in 1966 and understood, with the clarity that comes from watching someone who is better at the physical language of performance than you are, that there was a gap. He showed up at the dressing room she shared with the dancers. "I like how you girls dance," he said, in the unmistakable voice, standing in the doorway of a dressing room that had been organized with the efficient practicality of people who travel constantly and have learned to make temporary spaces function. The dancers looked at each other. Tina Turner looked at Jagger. They had, in fact, observed Jagger from the wings, watched him strutting on stage with his tambourine, the motion that was already becoming famous, and they had noted, among themselves, that he looked a little awkward, that the energy was there, but the physical execution of it hadn't yet found its home. Tina Turner showed him the pony. It was a specific step, the kind of thing that looks simple until you try it and discover that simplicity is a product of the body knowing something the mind does not yet know. Jagger caught on fast, which surprised nobody who had watched him move, but he found certain parts of it difficult, the footwork especially. The particular coordination of hip and heel that the step required was a coordination he had not built yet. He practiced it. Decades later, when people asked Mick Jagger about his moves, the strut, the footwork, the whole physical vocabulary that had become one of the most recognizable bodies in motion in rock and roll history, he had a consistent answer. My mother taught me how to dance. Tina Turner knew better. Not that he ever gave us credit for his new fancy footwork, she would write, years later in her memoir. To this day, Mick likes to say, my mother taught me how to dance. Okay, fine, but I know better. The Rolling Stones brought the Ike and Tina Turner Revue back to America in 1969, for the tour that would become, in retrospect, one of the pivotal moments in rock history. This was the American tour that included Madison Square Garden and the stadium dates and the intimate club dates. The tour that produced the live album Get Your Ya-Ya's Out. The tour that ended with the Altamont Speedway Free Festival in December, which ended badly enough to serve as a historical marker for the end of the 1960s particular brand of optimism. Tina was there for the beginning of it. She was on the bus, and on the stage, and in the wings watching the Rolling Stones every night. And they were in the wings watching her. By 1985, their friendship was 19 years old. It had survived the decades she had been essentially invisible, the years when Ike Turner controlled the stages she played and the money she earned, and the conditions of her professional life. When the Ike and Tina Turner Revue was working smaller venues, when the larger world of rock and roll had moved on without her. During those years, Jagger had become one of the most famous human beings on the planet. The Rolling Stones had played stadiums she had once headlined and left them behind for larger ones. She had not blamed him for this. Fame does not distribute itself evenly, and the uneven distribution of it between people who started at roughly the same level does not necessarily reflect the actual hierarchy of talent. She had known, all through those years, what she was capable of. Private Dancer, released in 1984, had confirmed it for everyone else. By the night of July 12, 1985, with the rehearsal finished and the band gone and the stadium quiet in the way that large empty spaces are quiet when the machinery of an event is temporarily stilled, Tina Turner was the bigger star. Private Dancer had sold more than 8 million copies worldwide. What's Love Got to Do with It had been #1 for 3 weeks. She had won 3 Grammy Awards in February. The Stones' most recent album had broken their streak of consecutive #1 records, stalling at #4. Rolling Stone magazine had put her on its cover and called her the comeback of the year. She was 45 years old and riding the highest peak of a career that had been running, in one form or another, since 1958, and the momentum was still building. She sat in her dressing room the following morning, Saturday, July 13, 1985. Wearing a white silk see-through peasant dress and red high heels. The outfit was not her stage costume. She would change before going on. This was her waiting room self, the Tina Turner who existed between the dressing table and the stage, the specific human being who was both the performer and the person who sometimes found the performer slightly alarming. She was teasing her hair when a reporter arrived. I feel honored to be standing next to Mick Jagger, she said, without particular irony, running her fingers through the signature layers. When you're standing there with that kind of force, you're proud. I just want to do everything right. I want it to be a memorable occasion for Mick as well. She paused, considered something, and then added, almost to herself. She considered, for just a second, which other men she'd like to sing with. She went back to her hair. The performance was scheduled for the evening segment of the Philadelphia show. The day had already included Queen's legendary 45-minute set at Wembley, which was being transmitted to the Philadelphia audience via satellite, and which had already entered the realm of rock mythology before the afternoon was over. David Bowie had played. Elton John had played. Paul McCartney would close the London show. The Philadelphia stage had seen Led Zeppelin reunite briefly, unsteadily, with Phil Collins on drums. Neil Young had played. Bob Dylan had played with Richards and Wood. The audience at JFK Stadium, 100,000 people, the ones who could not be at Wembley, had been standing in the July heat for 8 hours. Mick Jagger took the stage at JFK Stadium late in the evening. He played 3 songs alone, or nearly alone, with the borrowed band. And then he stood at the microphone and said, with the minimal introduction of someone who does not need to explain what is about to happen. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the drums came in. Tina Turner walked onto the stage. She walked. This is the specific detail that people who were there remember. She did not run, did not burst onto the stage, did not enter with the explosive energy that might have been expected from someone appearing in front of 100,000 people after an 8-hour build. She walked. With the specific carriage of someone who has spent 27 years learning that the stage belongs to whoever claims it, and that the claiming is done not by speed but by weight, by presence, by the simple act of arriving and knowing that the arrival is enough. The 100,000 people understood immediately. The sound they made was the sound of people who have been waiting for something without knowing they were waiting, who recognize the thing when it appears and release the recognition all at once. Jagger turned to look at her, and something happened in his face. The specific expression of a man who has known someone for 19 years and still manages to be surprised by them in the moment of performance. When the person in front of you is both the person you know and something larger than the person you know. They started State of Shock. They traded lines the way people trade lines, when the trading is based on genuine rapport and not choreographed exchange. With the specific timing of 2 performers who have been in each other's vicinity long enough to know when to give way and when to push. When to come in under the other voice and when to rise above it. Jagger had the home advantage. It was his set, his band, his microphone. Tina Turner had 27 years of owning whatever stage she was standing on. Neither of them gave an inch. By the time State of Shock gave way to It's Only Rock and Roll, the temperature of the crowd was something beyond what the thermometers were measuring. It was in the second song that the moment happened. The specific backstage conversation had been short and direct and completely characteristic of both of them. Jagger had looked her over, the tight-fitting black leather top, the leather miniskirt, and she had seen a particular expression forming, the expression of a man who has just had an idea and is deciding whether to say it. He said it. "Does that skirt come off?" he asked, slyly. Tina Turner looked at him. She had known Mick Jagger for 19 years. She had taught him a dance step in a dressing room in England in 1966, and watched him build a career partly on what her body had taught his body. She understood, in the specific way that you understand someone after 19 years of proximity, exactly what he was proposing and why he was proposing it. "Mick and I could never just stand there and sing," she would write later. "That wasn't us. We had to do something." "I asked him why," she wrote, "but it was too late to talk it through. Mick had already made his mind up to do it." Jagger ripped the skirt off mid-song. 100,000 people in Philadelphia lost their minds. 1.8 billion people watching on television understood that something was happening that was not in the program. Tina Turner, standing on the stage of the largest benefit concert in history in a black leotard and fishnet hose, kept singing. Without breaking the phrase, without losing the note, with the specific self-possession of a woman who has been in difficult situations on stages for 27 years and has learned that the show is the thing, that whatever happens, the show is the thing, and the thing to do is to finish it at full force. She finished it at full force. The ending was the ending of 2 performers who have run out of stage. Jagger and Turner strutted off in opposite directions, the band still playing, the crowd still roaring, the evening still not quite believing what it had just witnessed. Jagger walked to a microphone, off camera now, invisible to the crowd but audible through the speakers. "Thank you, Tina." 2 words, no elaboration. The specific economy of a man who understood that after what had just happened, elaboration would be a diminishment. Years later, after Tina Turner's death in May 2023, Mick Jagger wrote a public tribute. He had been writing and speaking about her for decades. The anecdotes about the 1966 tour, the stories about what she had taught him about performance and movement, and the physical language of rock and roll. But the tribute he wrote after her death was different in register. It was the writing of a man who had known someone for 57 years and was trying to say what 57 years of proximity to greatness had meant. She was truly an enormously talented performer and singer, Jagger wrote. She was inspiring, warm, funny, and generous. She helped me so much when I was young, and I will never forget her. She helped me so much when I was young. Not, she was good at what she did. Not, she was one of the greats. She helped me. The specific, personal, direct acknowledgement of a debt, the debt that begins in a dressing room in England in 1966 with a dance step, and continues through the long friendship of two people who came up in the same world at roughly the same time and helped each other, in their different ways, become what they each became. What happened at Live Aid on July 13, 1985, was visible to 1 billion people. What happened in the 19 years before it, the 1966 tour, the 1969 tour, the dressing room in England, the dance step, the mutual observation of two performers learning from each other across 2 decades, was visible to almost nobody. And yet the 6 minutes at JFK Stadium could not have happened without the 19 years. The shorthand between them on stage, the way they knew when to come in and when to step back, the way their bodies knew how to move around each other, the way the chemistry was immediately legible to 1.8 billion people watching around the world. All of that was the product of 19 years of friendship and proximity and mutual regard. She helped him so much when he was young. He helped her too, in the specific way that friendship between performers helps, by being there, by being a witness to what the other person was capable of, by showing up at the side of the stage on a Friday afternoon in Philadelphia in the July heat, and rehearsing for an hour because the work mattered and the other person mattered, and the 1 billion people watching the next night deserved the best version of the thing that two people who had known each other for 19 years could make together. That was what they made. They made 6 minutes that people are still watching 40 years later. 6 minutes that stand as one of the highlights of the most watched concert in history. 6 minutes that began with a dance step in a dressing room in England in 1966, when a 26-year-old woman taught a 22-year-old man how to move, and he never quite gave her credit for it, but remembered it, carried it, built on it, and finally said so, plainly, publicly, in the tribute he wrote after she was gone. She helped me so much when I was young. Tina Turner was 26 in 1966. Mick Jagger was 22. They were both young. They were both learning what they were capable of, and they learned some of it from each other, in the specific way that two people who are genuinely good at the same thing learn from each other when they are honest enough to admit what they do not yet know. She was honest enough. She always had been. It was one of the things she was. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who would love it. Subscribe for more stories about the human beings behind music's greatest legends, the friendships, the debts, the 19 years of history that produce 6 unforgettable minutes. And if you were one of the 1 billion people who watched Live Aid on July 13, 1985, tell us what you remember in the comments. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of these stories.